Good morning, Money Tribe. I've been receiving a lot of messages on social media lately because of the content that I've been putting out. You guys have been witnessing the content. It's been controversial. I've been pushing buttons and it's been invoking a lot of responses from people. My DMs have been overflowing. My WhatsApp has been overflowing. But this morning I had an interaction with a guy who sent me a message over WhatsApp, and I really wanted to share some of this with you because I think it is a very teachable moment, and I'd kind of feel guilty if I didn't share this with you. So check this out. So the WhatsApp message that I received basically said this, and I'm going to read it verbatim. My personal opinion, I do not appreciate your newest videos. How you talk about people being fucked if they don't have a certain amount of money. 95% of people will earn a normal salary, minimum wage or more. Only the top 5% of people will actually open a business or invest. Tell people what they can do, not you're fucked if you don't have a couple of million in the bank. Now, this, of course, is a very valid comment, and I get a lot of these comments in my DMs, and I actually just want to share the voice note that I sent in response to this and the rest of the conversation, because I think there's a lot of teachable moments in here, and it also goes to speak to the intention of the Money Tribe and the intention of what it is that we're doing. Good morning, Jason. First thing, thank you very much for taking the time to send a well thought out message, as well as actually taking the time to fire up WhatsApp and send me your thoughts. I really appreciate it. And I just wanted to give you some context because I think it's important also to understand where these clips come from and to understand the source of the information. So the conversations that you're seeing right now on my social media pages are actually clippings from a much longer conversation, about 2.5 hours, where I actually did provide the solutions. And we've pulled out the highlight reels based on engagement rates. So I'm not going to go too deep into the social media strategy. But what I will tell you is that we obviously focus on problem, solution. And it's about getting people's attention. It's about pushing buttons. It's about getting people to wake up, because the financial industry words things in such a middle of the road sort of way that people don't realize the deep shit that they're in when it comes to money and finances, and especially considering the state of retirement funds, considering the state of the country's economy, the global marketplace, the macroeconomic picture. And so there's a whole complex financial layer that people don't really understand, which is exactly why we created the Money Tribe. Now, these clips that you see are very intentional to invoke conversations. And I got to tell you, the clips in particular that you're mentioning have probably had the highest number of conversations started from there, both over WhatsApp, in social media, my DMs. And we're finally starting to break through to the people who are open to listen. You know, traditional media has been telling me for years that I need to tone down. They've been telling me that I need to water my message down, that I need to say things a certain way. But my own personal experience is the middle of the road content just doesn't get people to wake up. So my job is actually to be a fire starter. My job is to push a button, to invoke a little bit of anger, a little bit of emotion out of it, and then get people talking. Because once people talk, they can fix the problem. The problem is most people are not talking about the issues. Most people are going through their working lives, ending up at 65 with not enough to retire. And I see it all the time. I spend a lot of time in retirement homes. I spend a lot of time helping very, very wealthy people and prominent people with their estates and obviously winding things up. Now, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not a financial planner. I'm somebody who came from nothing, from nowhere, and I built myself to where I am today. And I can tell you, the traditional advice that you're getting is just too middle of the road. People need a shock to the system. People need to look in the mirror. People need to look at the state of the economic situation and understand that the problems are real, and simply burying their heads cannot help. Now, there's a lot of things that I agree with in your commentary. But like I said, there's a lot of things that people aren't telling you about self-managing your retirement funds, about making sure that you set aside a significant portion of earnings. All of this we teach inside the Money Tribe. And for me, the measure here is how many people am I getting through to? How many people are taking the time to message me? How many people were irked enough to start a conversation? And I can tell you that, unfortunately, the state of where we're at, to get people off their seats and to pay attention, you've got to push a big red button. So I hope you understand that the intention is truly to help people. Now, there's a lot of arguments out there for, you'll catch more flies with honey, right? The truth of it is, if I look at the stats, if I look at engagement rates, we have to push buttons to wake people up, as uncomfortable as it is. Most people would not want to do what I'm doing because it puts you in a position to be hated. It puts you in a position to be disliked. And I think that is part of my social contract and part of my social responsibility is to wake people up and bring them over. So we constantly have this debate in our business. If I just simply show people how to make money, we'd have 1,000,000 times more people coming through paying attention to the content. But the problem is if you teach people how to make money and you don't give them the foundations, then at the end of the day, they won't hang on to the money. So we've got to give the foundational content, teach people the important stuff about the long-term planning, the long-term thinking, about taking the slow compounding approach to money. And irrespective whether you're in the top 1%, top 5%, top 20%, it really doesn't matter, because what we're sitting with is we're sitting with a situation with people who are literally in middle-class poverty. Now, middle-class poverty means you've got a house, you've got a car, you've got all the things that sort of make you function. But the truth of it is you're just scraping by. Most people in the middle class actually not even doing that. And so we have to wake people up. We have to provide the shock to the system. Now, I know not everybody's going to agree with me. I know that I'm going to piss some people off. I totally get it. I understand it. I take my responsibility very seriously. And if it takes me being disliked to get people to pay attention to the deeper messaging, then that is what I need to do. And believe me, when I say this, we take our contract with society very, very seriously. From a bunch of people who have managed to climb out of that bucket of poverty, middle-class poverty, and find ourselves on the other side. There are not many people in our space that are actually talking up about the real stuff behind the scenes. And there's just no way to foo-foo around the message. So, I don't want to sound like I'm dismissing your commentary. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate you taking the time to start a conversation with me. And hopefully, you will just pay a little bit closer attention to some of the deeper messaging, and pay attention to some of the other bodies of work that I put out that really are not just revolutionary, but are changing lives, because we're addressing things from the bottom up. You cannot build a house without strong foundations. And the problem is the education system fails us, the financial system fails us, governance fails us. And so it is becoming imperative for individuals to find their sovereignty from the financial system, to find emancipation and liberation in self-determination of retirement, of saving, of investing. And we have to keep pushing, unfortunately. If that means pissing a few people off along the way to get the greater good done, then that's what needs to be done. So I'm definitely not dismissing your message. I note your commentary. I've noted everyone's commentary on social media. I pay very close attention to it. I'm not ignorant of the sentiment when I put out certain phases of videos, certain segments of videos. And you'll see at times when I'm teaching stuff, as opposed to simply providing commentary on the state of affairs, I tend to be a lot more toned down. So you'll see I'm doing a series on BRICS. It's a lot more toned down because it's more logic driven. It's less emotive. But when it comes to the stuff where I need to push the emotive narrative to get people out of their chairs, then I measure that success rate by how many people are actually starting conversations. So once again, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to message me. I really appreciate it. I hope you'll keep paying attention. I hope that I push a few more buttons and maybe irk you a little bit more and just steer you in a slightly different direction, because, man, people are being failed by the system terribly, 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 terribly. And it all comes down to a lack of knowledge. And I believe truly, from crossing over to the other side, I believe that knowledge is very intentionally being withheld from the masses, because, again, that lack of knowledge benefits the top 1%. So, yeah. Jason, thank you very much, and I hope you'll stay in touch. So now I want to take you into the second part of this conversation, because the conversation actually got a little bit deeper and a lot more to the point. So listen to this next part. So the second part of his reply message was, "My apologies, I took them out of context and I understand. So just to come back around, I'm currently 24. I'm also self-made as a millionaire. I've opened a business in education with schools around SA at 19 and doing really well for myself. Money is hard. Business is even harder. I have a pension fund. I have savings. But in order to do what you say, you legitimately need to open a gold mine of a business in order to become financially free, which is the problem we all face. Business is harder. Unfortunately, we can't all be rich. We need to have the working class to make the world turn around. And here is the second part of my response, and it is deeply insightful. So please take some notes and pay very close attention. Yeah, Jason, so that's actually a conversation that is part of a much deeper and more complex understanding. Traditional wisdom is that to generate significant wealth, you need to be in business. And I don't agree with that, and I'll tell you why. Because consistency of income is the single biggest driver of wealth, and consistency in investing and saving and using the financial system to its maximum benefit by cutting out brokerage fees, by self-investing, by leveraging a multitude of investments, right? And so if you look at the average life cycle of an entrepreneur, you're going to make money and you're going to lose money. It's an up and down sort of path. And you will find that most entrepreneurs, and I'll guarantee it will happen to you, you're going to lose a significant amount of money at some point in your journey. Whereas if you take a middle class employee, if they just follow strict financial discipline over 40 years of their working life and they have consistency in earning, they're actually often in a much better position to create true generational wealth. But what we're not being taught is about capital allocation. We're not being taught about self-investing. We're not being taught of the impact of brokerage fees, which, I mean, is scary. Just 1% in brokerage fees over a 20-year term of investment is 1/3 less in capital at the end of that investment. So there's a lot of deeper layers here. But what I will tell you is the single biggest driver of wealth is consistency in income. People think there's only one path to beat down to become wealthy, which is to start a business and amass capital. And that certainly is one way, and it is my preferred way. But for a lot of other people, working class people, it is disposable income and making sure that they have consistency in disposable income. And so people are entirely focused on the wrong shit. They're buying cars, they're buying houses, and I'm not saying that you can go without those things, but for example, people are pouring money into primary residences, which is actually a net outflow of cash. In addition to which, if you do the numbers over a 20-year lifespan of owning a property, if you take into account inflation, running costs, everything, many cases, people are better off taking the capital that they allocate every month to paying a bond to actually taking on some other form of investment and renting. And I know this is what people don't want to hear, because the narrative that we've been sold is you must buy a home, you must invest in a pension fund, etc. What you're also not being told about your pension funds and retirement funds is that these pension funds and retirement funds are basically invested into paper assets which you can directly invest into yourself if you have the discipline, which is something that we teach, because one of the benefits of being in a pension fund or retirement fund is you can't touch the money. One of the downsides of self-investing is that you have to have the discipline not to depreciate capital at any point in your journey. The other thing that I think is also critical to understand is that earning parity versus expense parity is the thing that's fucking people up. Now, it's completely different if you're in your own business, because, you know, that's a totally different discussion. But for the average working class person, it is very possible to amass significant net worth at the end of 45 years of working. But the problem is people are allocating their income to bullshit rather than focusing on getting to 65 with significant net worth. So like I said, there's a much deeper layer to this conversation, and the narrative that, you know, there's only one way to become wealthy, or there's only one way to accumulate capital, which is through entrepreneurship and obviously beating down the path of being self-employed and running a business, is totally and utterly untrue. And in fact, I would say in my circle of exceptionally wealthy people, at least 50% of them are career people. In other words, people who have worked their way to the top of businesses. They're essentially employees. We teach tax strategies, for example, for people who are employed, that they can reduce their tax down from the 48% bracket down to like a 15% bracket. And all of this comes down to figuring out how to use the system against itself. But unfortunately, this stuff is not in the mainstream media. And I try to put it out on social media. I've been banned 11 times on TikTok for teaching these strategies, which is exactly why we started the Money Tribe. We started the Money Tribe, which is not just focused on creating wealth for entrepreneurs. It's focused on actually middle class, normal people, how to get out of that rat race, how to self-determine their futures. So yeah, like I say, there's a lot of stuff here that needs to be unpacked, and I honestly can be going for 4 or 5 hours at a time when I start unpacking this. And my greatest desire is to wake people up to the opportunities in the system, but also how the system entraps us and enslaves us. And you go right back to the education system. People have been sold a narrative that, you go work for 45 years of your life and you get a pension fund at the end, and then you have your golden years, only to discover that when you come around to 65, well, you can't touch your pension funds. You can only touch a certain portion of it. If you decide to immigrate, usually you cannot take your funds with you. And if you can, there's a significant amount of taxation on the way out. We talk about the impact of taxes. You get taxed when you earn, you get taxed when you spend, you get taxed when you retire, you get taxed when you die. It just never ends, right? And so we teach people the strategies to legally navigate within the system. So, I don't know if you are currently a Money Tribe member or not. It is definitely worth checking out. We talk about the foundational stuff. Another thing that's a big problem is the tools which people have at their disposal to influence their financial outcomes. A very big one is health. So many people are focused on the money part of the journey, but nobody talks about making sure your health is optimized for your golden years, which means, leading up to 65, those 20, 35, 40 years of working, you need to be working on your tool, which is you, making sure that you're in the best possible shape heading into retirement so that you don't have medical bills stacking up. So this is really a deep conversation. So all I can say is please go and check out the Money Tribe if you're not already a member. Go and try it out for a month, and I'm very certain you'll appreciate the direct speak. I'm very sure you'll appreciate some of the things that are not spoken about in the traditional spaces. And I unfortunately have to find a way to reach people without saying what I actually know and what we've experienced, because we get shut down on social media, which is why we have to invoke responses from people so we can have these conversations. So obviously in the process of creating this content, we're going to piss off a lot of people, and a lot of it is very intentional. Like I said in that voice note, I know that I'm going to be disliked for the stuff that I put out. But if you are looking for a different outcome, you have to obviously focus on doing different things from what you have been doing and from what you've been taught and what you've been told. And this is exactly why we created the Money Tribe. So, to those who are members, congratulations. You've taken an incredible step forward in your own personal journey. For those of you who are still thinking of joining, all I can say to you is go and check it out. You can take a trial for $1, gives you 7 days access, and at least give yourself the opportunity to go and teach yourself and learn from people who are telling you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. And unfortunately, a lot of it is uncomfortable. And if you want to grow, you've got to be prepared to put yourself in an uncomfortable situation. So hopefully this has brought some context to a lot of the content that I'm putting out. And if you do have any questions or comments around this, you can hit me up on WhatsApp. You can hit me up in my DMs. I try by all means to give as many personal responses as possible.